His incredible recovery has been documented on video and received national media attention on the Discovery Channel, CNN, and NPR. After the fall is a climber's true story of facing death and finding life. Craig DeMartino is here from Loveland, Colorado. Sweet.
Yes, thank you.
What isn't sweet is finding you 100 feet up a cliff in Rocky Mountain National Park.
Yes.
When you grew up with a fear of heights.
Yes. Well, I thought I had a fear of heights because of my dad. My dad is still afraid of heights, and so I thought, well, this guy knows more than I do, so I should probably be afraid of heights. But then once I started climbing, I realized I wasn't. I love heights, and so it was one of those weird things I had going on.
And this is a technical climb.
Yes.
This is life-threatening stuff.
Can be, yes.
That you do. And I need you to take us to, it's July 21st, 2002.
Yes. I was climbing in Rocky Mountain National Park with a really good friend of mine, and just through a miscommunication, I thought I was going to be lowered from the climb that we had just done, which was 100 feet tall. And so for 100 feet, for listeners who aren't climbers, is a 10-story office building, basically. And so at the top of the 10-story office building, I thought I was going to be lowered. He thought he was coming up, and so he inadvertently dropped me that whole 100 feet. And so I landed, coming down was tipping sideways, and about 20 feet from the ground there was a dead tree, and I hit the tree. That stood me back up to standing, and so landed standing in the talus, which are large blocks of granite that had fallen off the cliff, and that just shattered everything, basically. Just my feet, ankles, and back took the brunt of the damage and broke my back, my neck, both feet and ankles, ribs, punctured my lung, tore my rotator cuff, burst a sac in the elbow, and then just crumpled me down into the blocks at the base.
It should have killed you.
It should have absolutely killed me.
You were saved by a tree.
Yeah, by a dead tree that I had walked around, paid no attention to as I walked up to the cliff, but that tree, that was one of the very first miracles, as I like to call them, just that stood me back to a standing position, which is one of the only ways to survive that distance of a fall.
Craig, many people who know me have heard me say, even if you're a profound atheist, if you're hanging from a cliff by your fingernails, you are going to cry out to God. You didn't even think about God.
No, when I was on the ground, and I was a Christian at this time, when I was on the ground, the only thing I could feel was pain, number one, and then confusion. And my feet were so shattered and I was bleeding. I severed the artery in my leg. I was in so much pain and just overall discomfort that I was confused more than anything. I didn't know what happened. I didn't know what was happening. And so God was not in my head at all. I wasn't thinking, oh, help me, save me. It was more just, I am so confused and I just know I need to be out of here. And so through the rescue, through the carryout, there's 5 hours to a helicopter.
And a series of miracles that you detail in the book.
Huge miracles. And I talk about it a lot in the book, and probably 8 big ticket miracles that got us to the helicopter, to the hospital, the doctors, everything, the care that I received. Amazing miracles. And yet God didn't really come into my head until I was in ICU, kind of coming back around, is when he came into my head very strongly.
You call yourself a fake Christian. Quote, God was an accessory in a busy life filled with other priorities.
Yes.
When did that change?
I was in the hospital probably 3 weeks, and I was out of ICU. I was off the ventilator, so I knew I was going to live. But walking was definitely in question. Doing anything, again, was in question, and I couldn't move. But I could reach a bedside table, and someone had sent me a daily devotional book.
By Max Lucado.
By Max Lucado, that I poo-pooed and didn't really ever read those before and thought, oh, those are silly. But I could open it that day, and that day, on July 21st, I looked what it was about.
Shall I read what you highlight here? The devotional, by the way, is Grace for the Moment. You look to the date of the accident.
That's the date I fell.
How far do you want God to go in getting your attention? If God has to choose between your eternal safety and your earthly comfort, which do you hope he chooses?
And he chose for me. And it was one of those moments where I've never had God speak that clearly into my life. And I remember thinking, I really, number one, was embarrassed and humbled that I had used God kind of as a vending machine. You know, when I needed something, I'd go there, and when I didn't, it was off. It was in the peripheral. And all of a sudden, I've lost everything that I thought was valuable. And I had my wife and I had my kids, which are my number one priority, but God should have been my number one priority, and he never was. He was there at times. Now, all of a sudden, all those things are gone. Everything on this that I had kind of banked into in this earthly world was gone. And I had this relationship with God that I had to, in my mind, mend, wherein God was just there and very present and very calming. And I just prayed and said, okay, I am confused and humbled. Just please show me what you want me to do. And he kept putting people in my life after that directed me.
And there were people who were already there. Your two main medical helpers were Christians.
Right.
Were prayed for you.
Right.
You were employed by a Christian, and
Christian publisher.
They set up a worldwide prayer chain for you.
I mean, thousands and thousands of people I had never met started praying for me. And because of Tom and Joni Schultz, just getting me down that healing path and just had these people behind me, and this circle of influence that I had was the catalyst for getting me better and better every day.
Your dear wife Cindy has a chapter in here,
yes.
And she says she's the kind of girl who learns things the hard way.
Right.
And she even came to a place of embracing why God had allowed this ordeal. And we cannot, I feel it's almost sacrilege to be squishing this journey into a few minutes.
Right.
I was wearied by your pain by the end of the story, but it's like a movie. It's quite a drama.
Right.
Spiritually, what was it for her?
You know, she realized we were going down the path together and working together, and she's my biggest advocate and just an amazing source of inspiration for me. And we got to a point where I developed this nerve disorder called RSD, or reflective sympathetic dystrophy. And I still had my leg, and the doctors had said, look, you're going to probably be in a wheelchair, and so you need to get your head around this, and amputation could become a real possibility. What do you want to do? And her and I came home from that doctor's visit, and we felt lost. We felt like God was gone, he was silent, and we didn't know what to do. And then
tons of depression.
You're dealing with it, and you're dealing with depression, and you're dealing with just this amount of uncertainty, and you don't know what to do with it. And so God was silent, and that was really hard for both of us. And both of us got to a point where we just said, and Cindy first said, you know what? I can't do this anymore. I'm done. And she just gave everything over to God. And I just watched her do that. And she had just this amazing, great attitude after that. And I thought, okay, I need to be doing this as well. And so we both, I think, after her lead, just said, okay, God, we don't know what's going on. You need to help us here. This is all yours. We can't deal with this anymore. And I think we needed to get there. We had come so far, the accident was so horrific, and yet we still had, I think, things to learn, and that was one of them. It's just giving everything over to God and just saying, okay, do with it what you will. And God stepped in a mighty way at that point. Mm-hmm. Just right doctors, right caregivers, and we just began this new chapter.
A great guy named Joe Johnson, an amputee who really gave you good counsel and shared your vision for being athletic.
Yes.
And now what's the stat? I wrote that down on how many amputees. Less than half of amputees are active, really active after.
And even active that's a tough word. Active just means they're doing something other than walking or being ambulatory. So I said to Joe, look, I think I want to rock climb again, and I want to ski again and mountain bike, so what do I need to do? And he was like, okay, here's what we do. And he was great and continues to be this great catalyst for me being active because prosthetic makers just aren't used to that. They're used to people saying, oh, I would like to walk again. And I'm saying, well, I want to climb El Cap and Yosemite again. And he's like, okay, let's do that.
Okay, I'm saying, are you crazy? And I would think your wife would say that too, but she didn't. She is a climber as well.
She's an amazing
In fact,
climber.
Your whole family do this crazy thing.
We do.
And it must be one of the most asked questions. Like, this nearly killed you once.
Right.
What are you doing up there again?
Why would you go back? And for me, it wasn't just like a quick jump back in, I'm going to climb again. It was me saying, okay, God, if I want to do this, what's this going to look like? And so God, again, putting the right people in my life. And it was a very slow process of climbing, being terrified, and then going back to it, and slow steps, just climbing a little bit, being scared, going, I'm not doing that, and then going back to it again. And so that process repeated over 2 years or so, and then really kind of got my body where I could predict it a little better. I still have days where it's hard to do anything, but days I feel great, I'll go climb and do what I'm going to do. And so those were the days I focused on and made that choice to say, okay, on the good days I'm going to get as much as I can done and push as far as I can, just see what I can do. It really just out of curiosity that God puts in my head, just let's see what we can do.
You'd been a climber for 17 years and you just couldn't picture your life going forward.
Right.
Without it, and you've made it a family affair.
Yes.
And a ministry.
Yes.
Tell us about After the Fall, the ministry.
After the Fall came from me just meeting people and saying, you know, hey, here's what I went through, here's my faith journey, and that's where the book came from, and that's where just me going out and sharing with churches and businesses and saying, you know, this is, we're going to have trouble. We're all going to have trouble. We all deal with stuff. And you're not going to fall off a cliff probably, but we all fall off cliffs of our own, you know, deaths and trauma and lots of things happen to us. And where is God in that mix? And where's your relationship with God? And I go out and speak with people about my relationship with God and just where I see God in my life, how I see God working in my life, and just hopefully bring them some hope and say, you know, as bad as it is, and mine was horrific, God is in it, and God is in it every step of the way with you. You just have to make that choice to find Him and let Him find you, and then follow Him through it.
Well, it's a fascinating story, and we don't have time to talk about that Ertl bone bridge, but Joe was able to get in ahead of the amputation and
Yes.
say, you got to do a couple of things if you want to be an athlete on the
Exactly.
other side. Fascinating, medically, spiritually. It's a page turner. The book is at our e-store, and I want to read your dedication.
Mm-hmm.
This book is for everyone who has been knocked down until the only thing left is the belief that God has a plan through the valley. He does. That's a message everybody needs to hear.
I agree.
Because we'll all have a valley.
Yep.
If we don't now, we will. And thank you for your vulnerability. You just raw real in here.
Yes.
And Craig, I think a lot of people who aren't giving God a thought will want to share your adventure and maybe make the decisions you've made. I hope so.
I hope so.
God bless you and yours.
Thank
Please
you.
stay safe.
Absolutely.
At home, you know who to pray for. And you know where to get the book. You don't want to miss this one. Craig, God bless you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for coming.
Appreciate it.